Just a quick introduction for me. I've got palsy, but I'm a big disability campaigner, and I'm also a freelance journalist to report on things that the media is not really picking up, but also I report on kind of like non-disability issues as well. Right enough, I've got to watch what I'm saying, non-disability issues, because every day it seems to be changing the word. So I'm happy to host this session. Of course, it's not all about me; it's all about the panelists as well. So get your questions in, and Anne will jump in at the end and help us with them. So first of all, I would like to say hello to Ross McEwan. He is a lawyer from today's sponsors of the Cerebral Palsy Conference, Dibley Brown. Hi, Ross.
Hi there. Hi, Michael. Thanks very much for having us along today. Thank you.
Thank you. And next off, we have Elaine Boyd, who is also got cerebral palsy, but she's also on the board of Cerebral Palsy Scotland. Hi, Elaine.
Michael, thanks for asking me along today also.
Yeah, and then we have got Jamie Rutherford of Enable Scotland. Hi, Jamie.
Hello, Michael. How are you doing? Good to see you again. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and last of all, we have Jackie. I don't know if Jackie's there yet or no. Okay.
No, we're just trying to get Jackie online.
Ah, right. Okay.
If he appears, he'll pop up.
Okay. Cool. Thanks. So we're just going to start off by I guess for we just for the door open as it were to anybody on the panel. Obviously, I've got some questions here, but I just want to find out before the coronavirus kind of hit everybody. What do you think of the state of the employment outlook for disabled people in Scotland? So if I can go to Elaine first on this one.
Thanks, Michael. I think there's a really mixed picture there. I think there's lots of unemployment just now and people finding it quite difficult to get a job. But I actually think there's huge opportunities for disabled people at the moment because of the home working arrangements that we have, where barriers to travel or be in a different environment are no longer there. We're all working at home, and in my case as an accountant, fairly efficiently too. So I think I would hope that the virus, the impact of that will actually open up opportunities for disabled people, Michael. I think a lot of work will need to be done to get to that place, but I would really hope that we could move forward quite a lot in these circumstances.
Jamie, I've known you for years, and possibly I've known you for years doing my charitable work for the Scottish Consortium for Learning Disabilities. And Enable's always been at the forefront of helping people into employment with a learning disability or a physical disability. I just wanted to see what your viewpoint of it was from an organisation's point of view.
I think in general we can be quite optimistic. I think from a policy viewpoint, the Scottish Government are very clear in their commitment to kind of half the disability gap. We know that the disability gap in Scotland is 45% compared to 81% for non-disabled people. And we know the Scottish Government are doing things to kind of mitigate that. The challenge with COVID is that we know that more disabled people will lose their jobs, and we know it'll be harder for disabled people to get into work. So will it be a bit of a setback? That's the worry, I think.
And Ross, being a solicitor, obviously you're going to find a lot of cases people being discriminated against as well. But I just wanted to touch upon that at the moment, as it were. So have you got any kind of like examples of that in the way, Ross?
Yeah, thankfully, I've not seen too much in the way of discrimination recently. Certainly since the pandemic has affected. Probably the vast majority of work we're seeing at the moment, and act mainly for employees. It relates to redundancy and issues related to that. Unfortunately, I think it's maybe an unfortunate sign of the times, the way things are going. What is certainly there, thinking about it from a legal point of view, for people trying to get into work or in work, is the protection from discrimination. The main thing there, and I've mentioned this at previous conferences, is there's protection for people either with who have a disability. So, cerebral palsy would it's not on the list of automatic conditions. It would be a legal disability, but it would meet the legal criteria that's set out for that in the vast majority, or if not all cases. Well, that gives protection during recruitment, to be prevented from being treated less favourably than others, and also during the employment relationship as well. So really, I'm pleased to see I'm not seeing so many examples of that recently. Might be these things are being caught by the downturn in work and in redundancies, but yet there's plenty of protection there for people if they need to use that.
Jamie, if I can come back to you, what kind of campaign is Enable working on at the moment in terms of knocking down the barriers to employing people with a disability? And as we all know on the panel, that there's still a bit of stigma out there. So what is Enable Scotland campaign at the moment to do with employment?
Well, not specifically a campaign, but we do a lot of influencing with the Scottish Government around how they design economic development policy. And so one of the things that we were involved in was helping the Scottish Government develop a disability employment action plan, which is really exciting, and helped set up a new public social partnership on disability employment recruitment, which will hopefully have a real impact on how employers see the opportunity to employ disabled people in Scotland.
Elaine, other kind of like disability.
Excuse me, sorry, I'm just making, Jackie. I think Jackie Manciera has just joined us, which is great. Jackie, would you be able to maybe just and I'll just mute yourself at the moment, please?
That's good. I'm glad it's all done. But they should have looked at that, right?
Right, sorry, please continue, Michael. And please do bring Jackie in when you're ready, Michael.
Yeah, so hi Jackie, thanks for joining us. We just started the station there. So I was basically just going to ask the panel, especially Jackie, the first question I basically asked is about what do you think of the employment situation today in terms of people with cerebral palsy, but also disability in general?
I know.
I think there's still a lack of support out there for people with disabilities to get into employment. And I actually think it starts from the education system. When you go to either if it's university or secondary school, where there is a lack of support all the way through, which makes it difficult for people to get into the employment market. But I still think the percentages of people with CP or disabilities is very high. I think a lot of it's down to people thinking, how much is this going to cost me to bring all this support in? But yeah, for me, I think it was easier in my day to get employment than it is now.
Maybe to Jackie and Elaine, this question would be suitable for. Would it be a good idea to have kind of like disability role models, as it were, to go into schools
Sorry,
to do
I'm
so, actually.
sorry to interrupt. Jackie, would you mind when you're not speaking, Jackie? Thank you. If you could just mute yourself. Sorry, Michael.
So, like, yeah. No, what I was saying to Elaine and Jackie was, do you think it's a case of having role models, like people like ourselves going into schools and colleges when it's safe to do so? Actually, not at the moment, to not knock away the barriers to, because I think there's a bit of a fear factor there, to employ somebody with a disability. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, Michael, it's a really good point. Lots of people, there's low expectations, I think, for people with disabilities.
Yeah.
My point would be that it's a huge part of society, so they need to be represented in the workplace as well. But showing success cases where people have been able to move through a career or have a good job, or even a job that suits them and that they really like, I think more of those stories need to get out there. I think we hear a lot about where it hasn't worked, but I don't think we hear enough or nearly enough about where people have been able to work successfully through their careers, etc. And sometimes it's just a case of small pieces of equipment or small adjustments being made to a regular role that can make it very effective for a disabled person. And what I would say is the government have actually come out quite recently with more financial support around equipment, etc., that I know Virginia has shared on the CP Scotland Facebook page. So there is some support out there. I still think there's a role when people join the workplace about feeling supported, whether it's through like an HR team or whether, for instance, in Audit Scotland, we've got a disability confident working group. So if someone was joining, we'd definitely connect people to that group. So there's something about educating employers out there as well, Michael, for me.
And and Jackie, what do your viewpoint on that?
I think, Michael, I would agree with Elaine 100%. I think it's also, but the bit that she ended with about getting information to employers, it's about educating them and actually what is out there, what they can get, what to assist employing a disabled person. There's a whole raft of information. It's all about educating and information.
Yeah, that's really a good point, and we might come back on that in a few minutes. But I just wanted to ask Ross as well about what is the kind of law in terms of employing people with a disability, and if there's been kind of like discriminating against. Obviously, you said earlier on you haven't came across that very in the past, but you may do in the future, and especially after coronavirus, like you might see even more. So I just wanted to touch on that point, Ross.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Unfortunately, do come across some examples of discrimination during employment from time to time. But certainly, what in relation to recruitment and actually getting out there and trying to find a job, it's obviously a challenge. There's almost an anxiety about it. You think, is this going to work out? Is it going to be a good employer? How's all that going to go? The law offers protection there, and the protection against discrimination applies right from the moment you fill in your application form and send that off to the employer. Through that recruitment process, attending for an interview. Probably these days it would be on a screen like this. I would have thought, but that protection is there right from the beginning. So if someone was, say, applying for a role and they meet the disability criteria, and they are in some way treated less favourably than other applicants that are applying, then that would be discrimination. It would be direct discrimination in that case. So there's protection there from being treated less favourably. So the law does help out there. It's not always obvious, though, whether you have been treated less favourably. Thinking about the recruitment process here, you might not necessarily know about all the information from other candidates, etc. I have to say this happens less frequently in my experience, or it might be I just don't get to see these issues or people don't know about it. There is a mechanism there. If someone was applying and did feel that there's been some discrimination, so for example, you haven't got this job because I have this medical condition, you can actually ask the employer to disclose the information. There's a right there to do that. If you need to go on and do this, you can ask information about the other candidates. We'll not give all the personal information. You can ask, about their age, whether the percentage of candidates who've disclosed they have a disability, etc., and see if there are any patterns there. But I suppose that's really looking at a worst case scenario. But the good thing about this is because there's protection against that recruitment, you can use that as a positive thing to say, hopefully that alleviates some of the fear, and say if I'm being treated less favourably, that is coming across, then there's a legal right to challenge that. So that should be enough for the employer to be switched on to say, right, we need to be treating everyone fairly during the process.
I was reading something the other day, Ross, actually, about the charity scope. Equivalent to a neighbour up here, but scope is down south, and they kind of like interviewed a lot of people with disabilities, and a lot of people with disabilities were coming back to say that the feeling for the jobs after coronavirus, and the answer that they gave was like that employers would say that that we're not putting something in place. Now, to me, that is discrimination right there, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, there's protection against that, and the legal protection here should be enough for employers to be saying, let's sort this out so it doesn't happen. But I think the main right that touches upon there is when an employer has an employee who meets this criteria for disability, then they have a duty to make reasonable adjustments, and that can be whatever reasonable adjustment is necessary for this employee not to be put at a substantial disadvantage when they're going about their work. The reasonable adjustments could be anything. It could be a physical thing. Literally, say access to a building. Needs to be a way to get in there. Mentioned there, I think it was related mention. Literally items of equipment. Whatever that happened to be. If it's an aid to something even hearing, there's hearing loss. There's particular devices you can get for that. So employers have a duty to do these things, to make whatever adjustments that's necessary. That's designed to prevent people being at a disadvantage. So there's a duty there to do that. But so what that means is the employee has a right to request that. Employee meets this criteria. So you can say, for example, I need some from my workstation, whatever it was, to help me go on with the job. So there's a right there to do that. If the employer was to refuse it, then that's an act of discrimination. Most modern employers, certainly larger employers, will be switched on enough to this that they have policies in place, particularly when there's a human resources department or they're well advised, and they'll be alive to these issues and will do what they can to accommodate it. I suppose it's the few situations where the employer doesn't then comply with their duty that maybe the issues come out. But it's just another example of where the law offers protection. You can use that to request adjustments, and no one should feel afraid to be able to ask for that, because that right's there, and that's what the law's for.
Elaine and Jackie, 1 in 4 people worked with a disability in Scotland. It's not big enough.
Absolutely, Michael, and I think we need to gather more information in that as well. And I think the government have been trying to do some work in that and help and encourage the employment of disabled people, but I think there's lots more to do. I also think there's something for disabled people's mindset about knowing what they want to do in employment and really going for it. And Ross has made very clear about the protection that they have around that, and maybe just talk to others about the support. And CP Scotland has a raft of of information and maybe could put people in touch with others that are going into employment, etc. So I think there's something about connectivity, networking, and really trying to sell to employers the benefits of employing a disabled person. For me, I think we're the best problem solvers in the disabled community, because we usually can't do anything conventionally. We have to think in other ways of doing things. So for an employer, that's a huge asset for me. So I think we need to work hard at that. But it's a fair point, Michael.
And going back to what Jackie was saying earlier on as well, and I kind of like found this back in my youth days, and that wasn't yesterday, let me tell you, but like, do you feel as though like the system kind of writes you off in a way, in terms of when you go to school, that when you know, Michael can go to a day service or a college, but they don't think about Michael or Elaine or Jackie getting paid work?
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, Michael. And when I was leaving school, the careers advisor said that I should go and work in a shop. And if you were waiting on me putting your messages through with one hand, you'd be waiting a long time. It's probably the worst job that I could have been put into. But I realised that I had an ability with maths and worked really hard to become an accountant. And I think it's just having that drive and determination. But don't underestimate how hard it is. Had to fight with university about getting a parking space, and it does feel like a struggle. And my personal ambition would be to see people getting through into these arenas without the struggle that I personally have had at the beginning of my career. And there should be ways of people doing that and the support to do it.
Jackie, are you the same?
Yes, I would totally agree with that. And I think for me, it was a struggle at the beginning. And in those days, I didn't have, you know, Equality Act or the DDA to protect. Nothing, no protection. So discrimination was quite huge. It was, you know, it was just a case of, we're not going to employ you, you know what I mean? Because we've got workers that will just bully you, and we've got this and we've got that. But it was about just being determined and finding the right organisation that fitted what I wanted to do. And because I could walk in those days with sticks, I was able to go around companies, you know, because I had one of these wee blue buggies, and that got me around, and it was a determination. Sometimes you need to be so determined and confident in your own self. And I think that when you leave school, there is nothing there that actually even gives you a mock interview, how to be interviewed, how to do all that. And if you're starting from a low base and your confidence is at 100%, going to an interview is a massive thing. It's huge. And even the most confident people can feel, whoa, you know, at interviews. So I think there's a whole, as I said, it's a whole education for people with disabilities, whether they've went to a special school most of their life. I mean, I went to Kelburn School in Glasgow most of my life. So I was getting to the stage where they couldn't teach me because I was ahead of every pupil. And I mean, teachers used to say, we can't take you any further. So therefore, that's when I moved up into the secondary mainstream school, and that was a big thing in those days. And that was another whole world to me. You know, because all of a sudden I'm in this school with all these able-bodied people who thought, who are you? What are you? You know, you're a joke. So from there I moved on, went to college, but it was still no support, if you know what I mean. And I see that today. I know people say we've got lots more support, but sometimes that support is not targeted in the right way. I still feel, you know.
Jamie, I wanted to ask you a question about like when people leave school and they want to work, obviously the employers, and obviously we can speak about employers all day and not giving people a chance, but do you feel though that when people is coming out of the disability schools that Jackie's talking about, people's not very confident because they are kind of like in what I would say a bubble going to school, and you know.
Yeah, I definitely agree to a large extent. And I think a key thing I reflect on is my son, when he left nursery, and lots of nurseries in Scotland have a graduation ceremony now. So when you go, you hold up something and you say what you want to be when you grow up. But my disabled nephew, who has complex physical disability and learning disability, held up a sunflower, because structurally we talk about work with children from a very early age. We don't do it so much with disabled children across nursery, across primary school and into secondary school. And so when interventions do happen, it tends to be in the senior phase of secondary school, and it tends to be a too little too late, really. So we need more support from early on to kind of inspire young people and show parents and families what's possible, because it is possible.
Now, here's a big question of the day, and I know what Jamie's going to reply with here, because I put out a video vlog the other night on Twitter, and Jamie kind of liked it. Well, I hope he did anyway. And this is to all the panelists now. I'm going to open it up. So the employers has got this kind of like, it's just, I would say, for years about not employing people with disability. Now that the coronavirus is kind of hit, do you feel as though employers all over Scotland has got a good excuse not to employ people with a disability? I'll come to Jamie on that one first.
No, I don't think they have a good excuse. I think now more than ever, we you know, as Elaine said, I think we can see that modifications to work and work can be made much more accessible and very quickly in some instances. So hopefully that'll open some minds a little bit. The worry for me is that more disabled people will lose their jobs in a recession, as happened in the last recession, and there'll be more people out of work applying for the same jobs. So there'll be a level of structural bias there that prevents disabled people from even getting through the recruitment process, because it's an employer's market at the moment. They can ask for more for less. And so we really need the Scottish Government. There's lots of investment going in across Scotland right now to improve the life opportunities and working opportunities of young people. So we need part of that to be specifically focused for disabled people to give them equality of access.
I'll tell you why I was asking that question, Elaine, was because employers has had an excuse for years now. Well, not so they haven't had an excuse for years, but now the coronavirus has come in, I think they've got a good excuse, because they say, oh, well, we've not got the funding or the money to kind of like take you on. And I suppose the argument as well is, you can adapt your office to the access to work and all that kind of stuff. So do you feel the same kind of lines as me there then, or?
I think you could feel like that, Michael, but I would probably challenge that and say that there should be more opportunity for disabled people because of the flexible working and the remote working that we're having to do just now. I don't think office jobs will go back to the way they were pre-March. I think there'll be lots of home working going forward. So that to me does open up opportunities for disabled people. The other thing that I don't think people or employers know enough about is the financial support they can get to employ people, and looking at that quite seriously as well, but really thinking about the benefit and contribution a disabled person can bring to a role. It's difficult at the moment to train people, so I accept that that is, if someone's at the start of their career, it's quite difficult at the moment, but it's not impossible. And certainly you could have buddy systems. I think there is something about isolation. I think a lot of us are feeling isolation, whether disabled or not, but particularly for disabled people, and not being able to get out and use transport, etc. So I think we need to try and overcome some of those barriers as well, Michael. But I do think there is an opportunity to get more employment for disabled people in Scotland at the moment.
Jackie, I was just, you know, I invited Gillian and Jackie to send me a bit of information about today. You were like a councillor for 5 years. Now, we want to see more people into the local politics for the government, as it were, at Holyrood, to do with that employment side, because we are the, I'm not saying everybody's experts, and I'm not saying, but we've kind of like gone through discrimination a wee bit in workplace and all that. So, Jackie, would you share my opinion there?
Yes, no, I think there's a big chance now for people to go into politics and become either local councillors, MSPs, MPs. You know, that there is that side of it. And I was listening to Jamie, and I agree that there's a lot out there for young people, and mainly young people with disabilities. You know, some of the programmes are bringing down, but I draw a line, Jamie, because the new ones that they're bringing out at the moment are like 6-month contracts. And I just feel that that's like an open goal for a lot of employers who will take advantage of that, and after the 6 months not keep the kids on. I think we need to find a way that if we're doing those kind of things, you know, at least make them a year like Community Jobs Scotland used to do, because with a year that gives us a real opportunity. We take on disabled people. All our workforce, apart from one, is almost disabled people, made up of disabled people. And basically we take them on, but we always try in that year to find the funds to keep them, because you know it gives them more confidence rather than after 6 months or even a year after they've given you their all to let them go, and then get somebody else in. So there's that. But going back to Michael's point about politics, I think that right now there's a huge opportunity for disabled people to take that up if they want it. But talking to Elaine, I agree a lot with Elaine, and maybe because I'm a cult hero or something, you know, a cult follower. But it's like it's going to be difficult for disabled people to get jobs now, because there's less. But because of working from home, and if that becomes the norm, then I think there's a huge opportunity for disabled people.
Hi everyone. It's Anna here. Just coming in to reflect some of the comments and the questions at this point, with about 10 minutes to go. So just kind of following up on what Jackie and Elaine have just been talking about. We had a comment from Heather who said she has cerebral palsy and she is working from home just now, and she agrees very much that there are potentially more opportunities in employment for disabled people now. You know, even interviews being conducted through Zoom. And she works as an advisor at GSIL, the Centre for Inclusive Living. A question came in for all the panelists, looking at kind of talking about role models and talking about self-confidence. So somebody made the point that role models are vital. Engaging with employers and helping the disabled person realise their strengths is also crucial. lack of self-confidence is a huge issue amongst a lot of young people that I work with, and that's actually from Richard Luke, who works for the charity Scope. So I don't know, I maybe throw that towards you, Michael, for you to respond to, and you can throw it out to the rest of the panel. So just the importance or the issue around self-confidence and role models.
Yeah, that's going to be a big, massive answer for me. I don't know about the rest of the panel. For me, it goes back to my school days, because obviously, why I was asking the panelists about why it's important about education, people can write you off, well, not write you off, but because I went to a kind of like disability case school, and don't get me wrong, I got all the help, and they gave you physio, speech therapists, got all the usual things. But when you start getting older, you find it more harder, because you have no pals round about to go out with, and that affects your confidence as well. Especially when you become, 16, 17, 18 upwards. And then for me, I went to college, and again, my college was in Motherwell, so in Askeg and Barheg at the time. So I went further away from my house than I did at school, So, but there needs to be things put in place for people to go to their local school and to knock down the barriers, and also in terms of getting people getting to see what your disability is, ask questions. I'm quite open. I don't know about Elaine or Jackie, but I'm quite open about my CP. If anybody asks me, I will give them an answer and stuff. And that's how you're going to get over the barriers, and then they become confident to go out and about myself. Like me, it took me ages to go out and about myself without my mum and dad. And I don't know if Elaine or Jackie would agree, but it was brilliant having that kind of like freedom to go out yourself. Don't get me wrong, I still love my mum and dad a bit, but sometimes you want your own freedom to go out and enjoy life, as it were.
Michael, just to pick up on one of the points there, and I'm thinking really about when I think about barriers to recruitment and getting into jobs. This is one area where I think the law is designed to try and help out. When people are feeling anxious about making applications, how's an employer going to react to that? And the point is, employers during the initial recruitment process are not allowed to ask applicants directly about medical conditions. And the idea behind that is to create that level playing field, and prevent discrimination there. So, for example, to avoid the situation where there was a pile of CVs with, someone has a disability and it goes in there and interview. So the idea is to prevent that happening. So you don't have to disclose that, or employers can ask, you don't have to disclose it at that stage. There are some exemptions to that for particular types of work. But so that's something that maybe helps out in some way. It's not a magic answer to it all. But the employers can ask, though, just to bear this in mind. Once a job offer has been made, they're allowed to ask then. So it's almost like a danger zone there that you could potentially fall into if you then didn't disclose a condition at that stage, and later, it was something the employer had to deal with. There's health and safety reasons for that. But certainly initially, to try and create that level playing field, there's a bit of protection there, so employers aren't allowed to ask directly.
Don't know if Elaine or Jackie wants to come in there.
Michael, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Right. Can I challenge some things around what Ross said there? Because let's take the CP community. Most of the CPs are are visible. Their disability is visible. And actually, if I didn't declare, I get that, if I don't declare on an application form, when I go for an interview, they're going to see that I've got a disability. So is it not better being up front on the application form explaining, that no way should this prevent me from getting that job? It's, there's nothing worse than walking in and somebody goes, oh my God, right? I would rather prepare them for that.
Yeah.
So that they know what's coming.
Yeah. Just on that, a lot of employers offered an interview to people with a disability that meet the minimum criteria. I think that's still around in the public sector quite a lot. So there is some hope there. But coming back to your original question, Michael, around confidence and role models and things, one of the things that I've found throughout my career, etc., has been just connecting with other disabled people as well. So I recommend that people get in touch with CP Scotland. It gave me a huge amount of confidence at one point where I thought my career might not be going that well. And also things, even just like riding for the disabled, being in groups where you can run ideas past one another. And I think maybe having a mentoring or buddying system, and it would be interesting to hear what the people from Scope would say about that, or role models that people could connect with. I think that could be really helpful.
That's an interesting point, Ross, and I wanted to touch upon Jackie's point, and Elaine's point was good, but I wanted to say in more broadly terms before I come to you, Ross, and possibly you'll all agree in the panel. It's like, it doesn't matter if you've got a walking stick or if you're in a wheelchair. I don't know if you all agree this, but your disability should become second or even third or fourth. You should look at the people's talents that they can bring to the job instead of, oh, look at that guy in the wheelchair, Ross.
Just to jump in there. Just really, I'm just keen to reflect what's coming up on the comments, and certainly it's just chiming with the question you're posing, Michael, which a couple of comments around the extent to which ignorance and assumptions by employers still play a role in the consideration of disabled people for employment, and a comment from someone that when they declared their disability, interviews started to dry up. So just to throw that in, I'm aware we've only just got 2 or 3 minutes left.
Yes, thanks. So I'll not rabbit on too much, but just to pick up on in the points there in recruitment, it's disclosing the medical condition at the start. It's a judgment call, really, as to whether you want to do that or not. In some cases, as Elaine says, yeah, it can work well, and there's employers will have a guaranteed interview scheme. In that situation, that should be of benefit. That's positive discrimination. That's allowed. So yeah, you don't have to disclose it at the initial stage. You can say that's where the judgment comes in. But the employer isn't allowed to ask. So the idea is to create that level playing field. So, but I say there's a danger zone there, and then they are allowed to ask once the offer's been made. So yeah, you would certainly want to be disclosing at that stage if it's something that you're going to need adjustments, whatever. But yeah, it's judgment as to whether you do that or not.
So before we finish up, maybe give a couple of last comments if you've got time, Anna, about what would people on the panel feel the best way forward and the best way out of the coronavirus is for people in terms of employment and more opportunities, especially in Scotland. Jamie, are you still, yeah? I don't know if Jamie's still
there. No, I'm still here,
yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so I just wanted to come to you first from an organisation, and also I know that I may go up with a lot of different organisations all over Scotland. So what's the kind of like inside scope, as it were, to help people?
Well, look, the priority in terms of COVID, has to be that we don't lose sight of our commitments to halving the disability gap. We know we've got a massive black hole in public spending coming next year. We mustn't lose sight of the fact that we've committed to halving the disability gap. So anything that comes down through future policy must have a clear commitment and element focused on disabled people. That's got to be our real focus, because we know in the last recession, disabled people, women and people of ethnic minorities lost jobs faster. And we know that they found it harder to get back into work. And so we must focus our resources on those people.
Thanks. Elaine?
I think there's a job, Michael, maybe to be done, and CP Scotland could help with this as well on the website, just pointing people in the right direction of where they could go, but also some examples. You talked about role models or confidence or whatever. So there's some examples, Bernie Hunter and people like that are out there doing all the social media stuff for CP Scotland. That's great news stories that's going on there. And I think there's something that could be done just in terms of social media and awareness of how successful employing disabled people can be. Thank you.
Jackie?
Yeah, I totally agree with what everybody's saying there. And there's yourself, Michael, there's Elaine, there's myself on here today, all with CP. Why don't we? Why don't we try and be champions for some of the people that's maybe struggling?
Yeah.
And helping them through it. You know, so that's like working with CP Scotland and seeing, you know, who they can, you know, who's ready to move into that big bad world out there, and a wonderful world as well sometimes. So it's about just giving them a confidence to do that, and I'm happy to put my name forward for that.
I think we all are happy, and I'm happy as being the chair to put my name forward as well. And so, Ross, we'll come to you lastly on that, if that's okay.
Yes, thanks. And it's really just to say, we've spoken about some of the protections out there, reasonable adjustments, you know, protection during recruitment. There are others as well. But it's really about, I think it's about using those rights positively. You know, not to be afraid to get out there and apply for jobs. And you know, the law is designed to protect and sort of create that level playing field. So yes, to use that in a positive way.
Okay, thanks to all the panelists. I hope you found that debate useful.